Hi there, welcome to the fourth episode of Creating Your Style Statement with upmashrian. Today we are going to talk about the most important topic which creates all the dressing up around itself. It is creating emphasis or focus in our dressing up. The focus point catches the viewer's attention and persuades the viewer to follow the image further. So let me give you an example. Here we have a whole sky and a very dark sky, and there appears the moon. So the moon becomes the focus. Similarly, in our apparel, we constantly need a focus of interest. We can't be the total dark sky to look at, and it would be boring. So consider if I just have to eat a pizza base. Focus and emphasis is the topic. So here in this session today, we are going to share how do we create focus. So coming back to how do we create this emphasis and focus in our apparel. So the techniques here is again, which we have discussed in earlier episodes, is contrast. The contrast between the units. That means there is a foreground and there is a background. So if I wear a whole blue, that would be a background. And when I add this top to it, this becomes the foreground, and the pattern and the difference between the pattern and the plain, that contrast creates the focus. So when you look at me right now, you are not looking at my jeans at all. You're looking at my top, and amongst the top, the red border takes on the highlight. So this is how we are going to discuss how we create emphasis and focus. So let me spell it out. We create contrast through size, difference in size of the units in your garments, difference in color, difference in shape, and difference in value. We're going to share a lot of pictures about this, so don't think it's too much to take in. Another very important part which creates focus and emphasis is isolating a unit. Say for example, I wear a hat or wear a jewel piece which is isolated from the rest of my apparel. A little distance is there, creates a focus, which we'll see a lot of pictures about that. Then there is a very important aspect. We have a face here. So anything that's placed on the top half usually takes our attention away. So it's all a game of what catches the eye's attention, and it has to work with the eye. So there's a lot of science behind how you can create someone to look at where you want them to look at. That's the winning game of focus and emphasis. So like in this picture here, we have the diagonal stripe taking away the attention, though she's wearing a polka dots jacket. And in the second picture, we have her lace top, which is taking the attention, and the background is her black trouser. So we have a foreground and a background. Without saying so, there is a point of focus there. So the lace is the point of focus, whereas though her trouser is not somewhere in the background, but is playing the background. That's what we say mean when we say playing the background. Next we have this very interesting, very old style of getting focus is having your pocket square and your necktie sort of color matched, whereas your suit is in a plainer color. So we have three examples here which we are seeing. Another interesting one is when you have your suit and your shirt in a plainer and not a texture, but your necktie is a texture, your necktie is a diagonal stripe. And we've talked about contrasting pattern and plain in our episode 2. So if you wish to go back and see that, you can always go and get a detailed view of that. So coming to some more examples of this plain beige suit and the beautiful attention given to the necktie. Do you see that no one has to tell you, and your eye will exactly go where there is a contrast. So here we have contrast of placement. Necktie is always placed next to your face, so it's in the top region of your body, and as well as there is a pattern and plain contrast. Let's reverse that with the red jacket. Now the red blazer here has a printed shirt inside. So there's that contrast is getting your attention. These two pictures which I am putting up for you are a very ideal example of getting your attention. In the first picture, the blazer gets your attention because of the print or you could say the texture on it. But what is playing for the background is the blue shirt and the cream trouser. Similarly, the printed shirt in this next picture gets your attention, and what is building up on that attention is the background of his suit. So in this next picture, what you see is there is stripes on his sweater. So these stripes are taking the attention. So here we have a contrast, plain versus the print, a plain versus the pattern. Also, there is a double contrast here because there is a blue sweater and there is a beige trouser. So there is a color also which is bringing in a contrast. As we see in the next picture, there is a red blazer. That's where your eye goes to. So once you see this red blazer, the background is of the dark top and the dark trouser color which he is wearing. We are going to go into detail in color contrast in my color sessions. So I am going to not talk much about them because this is a very big topic, how colors, a contrast in colors really bring you out, or reverse if it is not done so, So when do we use a color contrast and when do we not? We will do in our color sessions. Now coming next to one of the topics which I talked about for your focus is placement. The placement on the upper half of the body, anything that's placed there gets your eyes attention. So here we have examples of brands like Adidas, Puma using their branded logos right on the top half of your body. This is the same reason you have embroideries in women's wear on your necklines. You have your collar placed on a men's shirt right here on the top half. So this is how we create focus by placing it at that eye level. So there could be infinite number of examples. You could talk about the bow ties, you could talk about your neck collars, you could talk about all the pleating we do on women necklines, for women's wear. Okay, here we have example of women's wear denim pieces. It's very evident from these pieces, whichever picture you look at, your eye will go to the embroidery because of its placement, whether it's placed at the hemline, whether it's placed at her neckline, and whether it is placed near her placket. So this is an example which you could sort of think about how we do placements and focus. One thing which I really don't want to miss is creating emphasis in your clothing with your skin tone as being a color against the color of the apparel that you're wearing. Now that's a very important part. Some apparel colors bring us out, whereas others subdue us. So I want you to watch our color sessions and episodes which will follow. So the next one which we can't miss is creating focus through the contrast of plain and pattern. We've covered this in our first episode in great detail. I want you to go back and see that. And if you've already watched, you will know exactly what I mean. So the beautiful contrast created between plain, print and pattern. That is one we can't miss out. Then coming to contrast created by size. Now this picture is very interesting. Obviously I've borrowed it from Shutterstock. A contrast between a bigger size and smaller size gets our attention. They couldn't be closer in size. The size difference has to be there. So in the next picture as you're seeing, a same thing can look bigger or smaller depending on the units around it. So a very good example in another context is the way your buttons are placed in a jacket. Say this woman is wearing a white jacket and how her the closures at the waist are placed, creates the focus onto those buttons and creates a focus there. How the placket of this man's shirt is placed, creates not only a color contrast, there is also a placement contrast. So by now we have covered contrast with color, contrast with size, contrast with plain and pattern, placement which gets your attention, and also isolation of some elements of your garment. So now the last one which we are coming to is contrast with value. Now what is value? Value is the lightness and the darkness of one particular color. So you could have the whitish of grey and you could have the darkest of grey going more towards black. That's the kind of contrast we are talking about. So when we have a lot of contrast in value, that creates focus. See, for example, in your grey suits, when you wear a grey suit but your shirt is of very light grey, that contrast brings you out. Then wearing the same tone, same shade of grey. This brings us to the end of this episode, and remember what all we have shared about focus. And the most important part is that the focus is you. Any clothing that submerges you is not the clothing for you. The clothing that brings you out, makes you the emphasis, makes you the focus, is the right clothing. So with this, we come to the end of the session, and do let me know how my sharing has impacted you on the topic of emphasis and focus in your clothing. So like, subscribe and share your thoughts with me, and we're going to have color in our next episodes and a series of sessions on color, because color is the most important aspect. As someone walks in, the first thing you see is the color. So I'm going to leave you with one thought, as I usually do. You remember how we dig up gold, we dig up diamonds. We do not know where this diamond was dug up from. Place is not important. So for us as well, where we come from, what is my skin tone, what is my color is not important. What I make of myself, that's important. And we are all diamonds, remember? See you.